Right. Hello, everybody. This is Islam Andreev, and I'm here to talk to you about malware and viruses. This week we are dealing with this topic. So before we start, I really would like to thank all those people who participated in the classes and uploaded their homeworks. I'm trying to comment on them on the go. So please, later, if you have time, check on the comments that I leave in your documents, basically. And I really appreciate that you eagerly participate in these kind of classes. So let's start and talk about malware and viruses. So today, well, the plan is kind of short. We're going to talk briefly, review what I already talked about: Trojans, spyware, different kinds of worms and viruses. We'll consider viruses in more detail. Then we will discuss the ways we can protect ourselves against this malicious software. Then I will highlight some keywords, give you some final notes, and briefly describe you the homework. So, malware or malicious software is basically what people mean when they say viruses, worms, and Trojans. So, a virus is a malicious script. So it's usually a routine of a program, a part of a program, a small piece of program that infects a computer, usually random access memory, on the go while it's working, reduplicates itself, and does some harm. So, in contrast, worms are standalone files. They're standalone executable files that can self-duplicate. They can reproduce on their own without the user interacting with the files, or without the user executing the files or programs. So Trojans, on the other hand, are very kind of different. You probably remember this myth about, or this legend, this story about a Trojan horse that ancient Greeks brought to Troy, that ancient city that they wanted to invade. So the invasion, the assault kind of went too long. For 10 or 15 years they spent there on the coast of the Troy, and so they decided to do this little trick when they they built a huge horse and left it as a present for the Trojans, and they pretended to leave the city. So when the Trojans brought the horse into the city, it turned out at night that there was a squadron of Greek warriors hidden inside the horse. So they attacked the guards, opened the gates, and the Greek army invaded the city and captured it in one day. Well, you can watch a movie about that. So, what is a Trojan horse in terms of computers, as the computers are concerned? So, usually Trojans are hidden in some useful program that you can install, and this program creates a vulnerability in your system that a hacker or a criminal can exploit. So he uses exploits, some special scripts that use vulnerabilities to create a backdoor or to gain full access to a system, so-called super user rights. So next thing. Let's now discuss a virus in detail, what that is. Well, traditionally, as your books show, the viruses usually have like 4 distinct parts, 4 distinct routines, as they say. These are the misdirection routine. This is the first one that hijacks the control of the system. So as you probably remember or understand, your central processor or central processing unit, your CPU, executes commands one by one. So these are the assembler commands. So misdirection routine usually injects these parts into this normal sequence of commands, so that usually a jump routine, so that suddenly your CPU starts executing the viral commands, not the normal sequence of commands. This is a lot. This kind of virus works a lot like a biological virus. And this extent, you remember I told you, the biological viruses, the natural viruses, when they infect your cells, they inject the part of their RNA into your system, into your cell, so that these ribosomes that are responsible for building proteins in your body, they start building the proteins they start executing the instructions of the RNA and of the virus, and they start building viral proteins, not their own, not the one they're supposed to build and create, but the ones that the virus dictates them to build. So this is what a misdirection routine does. Basically, it hijacks the control of the system for a short bit, a couple of ticks of the processor of the CPU, so that further the next routines can also be executed. And the following routine is the reproduction routine. Of course, a virus, as a natural virus, the computer virus needs to reproduce, so in order to stay in the system and multiply in the system. So natural viruses do that by hijacking the ribosomes and making them or forcing them to build more copies of the viruses. So does the computer virus. The computer virus hijacks the control of the CPU or the memory and makes the CPU execute the reproduction routine, so that the virus can copy itself. Then the next two parts are called trigger and the payload. They work usually together. There is a trigger is usually a condition, a kind of condition that depends on the person who wrote the virus. So if a certain condition is met, a virus can execute the payload, and the payloads can be very different. Various things can happen if a virus gets into your system. So we can consider this simple Python virus. This simple Python virus that is not actually a virus, but it's a good example. As you can see here, we've got some initial strings that initiate the program. Then this blue part is the description of the search routine. So this script looks for other Python files with the py extension and creates a list of these files. Then we got the infect routine that basically copies all these strings into the program that you wrote on Python. And then there is this bomb, and actually this green part, it holds together like both parts, the trigger and the payload. So the trigger is if the date time is first that's 25th of January. So the payload is executed, basically the program prints happy birthday Cranklin, and these are like, that's what the virus does. It reproduces, it multiplies, and then it shows this message, this little message. Of course, it's not very harmful, but you can imagine kind of a difficult situation when you're working on your Python project and you have to, I don't know, send it to your boss, or you have to present it the next day, and then this program gets executed, and you understand that all your Python scripts and all the programs that you have ever written and kept on your computer now have these like lines too, and whenever they get executed, all the other files with the extension py get infected. So it can get a little bit troublesome because of the reproduction routine only, and but the payload and trigger are kind of harmless. So let's move on. How do we protect against the viruses? Well, obviously you need to stay alert, especially when you go on the internet, when you surf the internet and look for some files, download some dubious things. For example, you would like to get a free game that got pirated, or you would like to download a movie. So stay alert, and well, don't trust everything you see on the web. If you don't know what the script does or what the program does, it's better not to execute that, even if the person who sent it is like your friend. His personal data and identity could be, stolen, and somebody else would be talking to you that way. So stay alert and keep safe. Of course, you need to keep your active defenses up to date. That means update your antivirus. It has some databases for the most common scripts of viruses, worms, and trojans. So it periodically checks the random access memory of your computer. If anything happens, or if some changes occur in the random access memory, it checks whether these changes correspond to some viral signatures. So these databases need to be up to date in order for your protection to be better. You need to check for your firewall and see if all the ports are under control. And of course, in order not to execute or run some programs that you don't want to run or that you don't trust, please double check file extensions. As you can see from this little picture, I always keep my file extensions visible, so that I can understand what I'm trying to run, what kind of file I'm opening. Because sometimes, well, that was a usual trick a long time ago when the users were not so skilled. So you can create a double extension, so that the name of the file looks as one extension and the file itself is an executable file, and you change the icon to so that it looks like a normal document. So these things are easy to do, and it's easy to protect against them. Just make the use of visible file extensions, and make sure to always check the file extensions of the files that you run. That's just a normal thing to do for a system administrator or an IT expert, right? So if we talk about corporate safety, corporate security in terms of information, I once again mention that, well, usually those people who work in large corporations are not so keen on, keeping their passwords up to date. You need to make sure that all your users in your company understand what information security is. And in terms of authentication and authorization, I think, well, nobody wants to remember longer passwords, and I think that it's better to consider, at least think of some kind of biometrics, because biometric authentication is a trend, and is going to, I think, as personal, I think that is going to push aside the older passwords and the system with the password authentication, because well, that's because the only thing that matters in terms of password strength is not the different cases that you use, like upper, lowercase letters, or that password being alphanumeric and using some other keys or some other letters of different alphabets. This doesn't matter. The only thing that matters in longer perspective is the length of the password. So the longer it gets, the more secure it is and the harder it is to crack. So normally users do not want to remember long passwords, especially if you do that according to the books, and you make your users change their passwords once in 2 or 3 months. Nobody wants to remember all these passwords again and again, especially if they get long and people don't understand them because they're gibberish. This is just a number of letters, 10, 15, 16, 20 letters you have to remember. But that's kind of difficult and exhausting. So biometric authentication is the answer to this problem, because you don't have to remember your fingerprint. You have to just put it on a scanner and get authenticated. So of course, you also need to remember that your company or your Ethernet is not just people working on their computers in their system. This is also the Internet of Things and many different devices that you connect to the network: printers, routers, well, scanners, parts of the servers, parts of the peripherals, web cameras, standalone web cameras. So you need to remember that these are also computing devices, and they are, well, hackers can get access to these things if they are not secured well enough. So pay attention to the Internet of Things, IoT, and keep your Ethernet safe. And of course, well, the usual checkups or audits of your security are very useful. So ask your friends or your colleagues or different companies to pen test your security. If they are good experts, they could do that for free, or you pay them. So pen tests are usually a good way to understand what kind of vulnerabilities you have, and they are quite efficient. So for those who don't know, the penetration test is when you pay some expert and he actually tries to hack your system, tries to hack your security with different ways, so that, and then he creates a report whether it was successful or not, what kind of vulnerabilities you might have within your system. So pen testing, authentication, and Internet of Things kept secure are like 3 most important parts of staying safe in terms of your company information security. So finally, let's consider some keywords and some notes that we have. First, the blue three words, different terms connected with with hacking. I use cracking. Of course, there is also phishing. Phishing is when hackers try to use some social engineering and gain passwords and logins of your users. For example, they create a phishing website that looks like Vkontakte, and you put, or that kind of provides some services in Vkontakte. For example, they say that if you put your login, your name and your password in these two boxes, you will be able to read what your friends are doing right now. This is of course impossible in terms of Vkontakte API, but and this way the criminals, the hackers, try to phish the identity data from the normal users that are too naive to type in the passwords, so they can hijack the control of the account. So now we got, of course, our virus as a keyword, worm as a more independent kind of viral program, Trojan horse, backdoor, that is an established way for an intruder, a hacker, to gain control of your system. So an exploit, or to exploit, there is a verb, there is a noun, is a script that uses some vulnerability in such a way that that the hacker can gain some access or super user rights. Of course, we got super user rights, that basically this is the administrator's rights for Linux system. So we got this verb trigger, that means to start something, to start a sequence of events or some event or some algorithm. Misdirection, that's one of the names of the routines that are involved in viruses, that are part of the viruses. This is the first part. So there is this word direction, that means where you're going. Redirect, that means like to reroute that, to put it into another route or way. And misdirection is when you do that in a bad way. So if you misdirect something, you you make it divert from its intentional route or intentional initial way of living or going or executing. Then we got authentication, that's these words, penetration test, and vulnerability. So you need to remember at least some of these words, in best case scenario all of these words, in order to tell this kind of topic at the exam. So please learn them by heart, try to use them, and you will basically need these words in order to understand the texts and be able to talk about this topic. So as for the homework for today, we're almost over. As for the homework, you need to do two little things. First of all, I need to remind you that you need to submit these homeworks till April 3rd. Please upload them to your designated Google Drive folders. So we got an adenovirus PDF. You need to read this text number 4 and the exercise number 4, and there are some words highlighted. You will see them highlighted in yellow, and you need to build like sentences with these words. There are 10 words highlighted, and you need to build 10 sentences. So, and please consider exercise number 5 in order to remember these parts of the virus code in detail. And as for the second file, malware PDF, you need to complete exercises numbers 1 and 2, 6.1, 6.2. In order to do that successfully, you will have to read the texts that are above these exercises. So, but when I looked at them, they looked easy. So you can do that while you're watching some TV show or having lunch. These are very easy exercises, I promise. Not so much to do, but please submit your works. Once again, I repeat that because I feel kind of bored. So please submit your works. I will I can have the pleasure of checking them out and commenting. Thank you very much for your attention. Well, and see you next week.